Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started so that we stay on time. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. This is our third webinar in our series with Down East Lakes and Down East Coastal Conservancy. So thank you guys. If you want to say hi and who you are, maybe go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. That just lets us know who's here. It's kind of nice to see. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Kathy and I work for Down East Coastal Conservancy. We're a land trust based in Machias, but we have properties from Steuben up to Newback. And joining me today is Kendall from Down East Lakes Land Trust. Kendall, do you want to go in and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Kendall and I'm the Education and Events Coordinator with the Down East Lakes Land Trust, and we're based out of Grand Lake Stream. So we're a little bit more inland. We have about 56,000 acres in our community forest, and we're devoted to the long-term economic and environmental well-being of the Down East Lakes region through exemplary management of our forests and waters. And I'll turn it back to you, Kathy. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kendall. So before I introduce our speaker for today, I just want to go over some housekeeping. So like I said, feel free to use the chat if you guys want to. We'll save Q&A, questions and answers for the end, but if you have a question during the presentation, drop it into the chat and Kendall and I will look out for those. Otherwise, at the end, we'll let you guys unmute yourself and you can ask your questions directly. So today, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Carol. Carol is a Maine Master Naturalist, and she is here to talk about her really exciting year of sitting on a rock. So Carol, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I was in the Maine Master Naturalist program in 2019 and 2020, and it was a wonderful experience. And part of their curriculum is that you have to do what they call it a delimited site, and you sit in a site for a year. And that's what I did, although I took it to the next level. I sat on a rock for a year, and basically it was just once a week for about an hour. But it was really interesting to me with my observations is that every single time I went out there, there was something new that just absolutely blew my mind. And so this is my nature journal that came out of that rock sitting year. And so I have 100 slides in this journal, so we only have an hour and I want to leave some time afterwards. So I'm going to flip through some of the slides, but I'll just, excuse me, I'll just sort of pause on ones that I think are a little bit more interesting. Okay, so let me see if I can get this started. So this was actually my capstone project for the Maine Master Naturalist program. And this is the rock that I sat on. On our farm here in Ellsworth, Maine, we have 400 acres of wilderness, and this is a glacial erratic that's in the middle of a beaver flowage on our farm. And so I sat on this glacial erratic, which I called the GE, for a year. And this is just a sort of an ecosystem that I did where I sat. So I sort of drew what I was observing. So here's what I did. Excuse me. Every time I went out there, I would do 4 things to start, like a little meditation. Excuse me. So first I would look and see the 4 things that I saw, 4 things that sort of stood out to me, a little bit different from the last time I was there. And then I would close my eyes, and then I would think of, listen and write down 3 things that I heard, and then 2 things that I felt in my heart, and then 1 thing that I smelled. So trying to engage all 5 senses. I have to say, I have a degree in natural history, but it's 50 years old. And back then, we were told not to have anything objective, to be really scientific. And so this mode of changed everything for me when you brought it into your heart and you made yourself be in the middle of the community where you were sitting. God, I don't know, I have such a frog, sorry. So this is the first day that I sat, and it was April 1st, April Fool's in 2019. And I noticed these little, I thought they were fungi, these little, they looked like tiny little golf tees. I found out later on, I made a correction. They were not fungi, but anyway, they were adorable. And it was in April, so there was nothing else growing. And it was sort of beautiful to see these little tiny, sweet little golf tees. And also the first mallards had flown into the beaver flowage, a male and female. So of course, being interested about the male and female mallards, I actually looked up and I found out about duck penises. I don't know if you are aware of duck penises, but you actually can Google and see how they work. But they're 12 centimeters long and they're a corkscrew. And the female mallard's vagina is corkscrew as well, which I'm a retired midwife, so all of this stuff is very fascinating to me. So the third time I went out, there was feathers everywhere, and I realized that somebody had died, had been attacked. And then I finally found a very iridescent feather and realized that the male mallard had been attacked there. We have eagles, so I'm assuming it was an eagle. This is the kind of thing that I'm saying every time I went out there, there was something new and different, and sometimes it was really disturbing. It wasn't always fabulous, but that's the cycle of nature. Oh, and it's like right now, I'm looking for vernal pools. This is on our farm. I'm trying to find when the big night is going to be for the salamanders, but we were socked in on April 4th in 2019. River otter scat. I'm just going to sort of zip through some parts of this. This is a male turkey liber. I named him Liberace because he thought it was so fabulous. These are some of the, excuse me, the little animals that were in our vernal pools. But the one thing here, geez, is this American bittern. I don't know if you've ever heard an American bittern, but you have to Google American bittern and listen to its call. It's the weirdest. It sounds like a prehistoric sump pump. It's really worth Googling the American bittern call. But this bittern, when I saw him, he stuck his beak straight up in the air and he swayed back and forth and he blended in with the reeds, and he looked just like a reed. They're very shy birds, and this is how they actually camouflage themselves, is by swaying like a reed. Moose walk by. I'm going to go through some of these pretty quickly. Oh, a black fly, the first black fly. So one thing I read about a black fly that I love the way they wrote about this. Only female black flies feast on flesh. She has a razor sharp, jagged jaw-like mouth that rips and tears into the flesh for a meal. The fly bites, tearing a hole in the skin, and then feeds on the pool of blood that forms in the hole. She made. She also injects the powerful anticoagulant into the bite. The good news is that they will not feed after dark. Shadbush, which is probably going to be flowering pretty soon. One of the names for shadbush is serviceberry, because they say in the old days that the serviceberry blossomed when it was time to bury the dead after the winter, hence the service, and also when the shad were running. Our frogs in our pond. Osprey. So this was a discussion that I had with Maine, the Maine force, the wardens. I thought that we maybe had cottontail rabbits here because they didn't turn white in the winter, and there was a long discussion, and because the cottontail rabbits are not supposed to be up here. And it turned, well, I'll continue this story in a minute. Mustard, these are just the greens that are in the field going to the flowage. Hi, honey. So what happened was the Maine wardens wanted me to be able to get a picture of this bunny so they could try to identify it. And unfortunately, one of my dogs killed one of the baby bunnies. So I called them and and I froze it, and they sent one of the wardens down to get the rabbit, and they were going to bring it to the lab up in Orono to do some genetic testing to see whether it was a cottontail or a snowshoe hare. So this is a story I didn't realize about fireflies and how nefarious female fireflies are, but here's what I learned when I researched about fireflies is that the female firefly, the male firefly is up in the is signaling to mate with a female, and each species of the firefly has its own blink pattern, and the female is down in the grass, and God, I can't, excuse me one second. So the female is down in the grass and she's flightless. So the male is blinking. Holy God. The male is blinking and trying to signal to find a female to mate with. So the female sees the blink pattern. It's like Morse code. She sees the blink pattern of her own species. So she blinks back from the grass. The male flies down, mates with her, fertilizes her, and then he leaves. So then this female firefly waits until she sees a blink pattern of a male that's not her species, and she mimics that blink pattern back, and she blinks back the specific Morse code, and he comes down to mate with her, and she eats him. So this is like fatal attraction. Some of the firefly, the insect behavior that I learned during this year was just astounding. It could make anybody's toes curl, actually. It's amazing. There's our resident snapping turtle. I named her Tina because their scientific name is Chiledra serpentina, and she has been here for years, and she comes up every summer to lay her eggs, and she tries to lay her eggs in our leach field. Now, here's the thing about turkey vultures I didn't know, is that turkey vultures can smell decomposing, they have the decomposing meat from miles. And so, but they have this ability to smell methane. And so when gas guys see turkey vultures on the ground gathered around, that's how they can actually identify if there's a gas leak. Fascinating creatures. And then this whole story about this is my water lilies that we have in our beaver flowage, beautiful flower. Robins, the pickerel frog. I actually startled a little fawn when I was walking through the field. So the common, about Asclepius, that's what monarch butterflies have to have in order to eat and to reproduce. So it's actually interesting to me that I think the monarchs are starting to rebound because whole communities are stopping mowing down their milkweed, which has been a great community, like citizen scientist project. And so I think that the monarchs are actually rebounding a little bit because people are saving their milkweeds now. And of course, they're a beautiful insect. I'm just going to sort of zip here. So this dragonfly that I caught, we were supposed to catch one for our class. When I looked with a loupe, a magnifier, it had all these beautiful red berries, red burgundy beads on its chest, and I couldn't figure out what they were, but they were gorgeous. And then I looked it up, and they were water mites larvae. And I think that this dragonfly had so many of them on her that she couldn't fly, really. And then actually, after she died, the mites dried up. I'm sorry if I'm being really sort of like Stephen King's nature journal here, I know. Oh, this picture I got at the top is a goldenrod crab spider. that so that it hid underneath the leaf of the milkweed plant, and then it waited for a bumblebee to come and land on the milkweed flower, and then it jumped out and attacked it and killed it. And I actually got a photograph of this happening. You know, it's really a jungle out there. This heron down below is one of our resident herons in our flowage. We have a heron rookery, and so we have quite a lot of herons, although the numbers are down because of the eagles. Oh, okay, this is one of my favorite stories. So this is a horned bladderwort, Utricularia cornuta. I have been looking for this plant. It's a carnivorous plant. I have been looking for this plant for over 50 years. Anyway, the way that this plant works is that underneath the water, in its little leaves, each little leaf has a little bladder attached underneath it, and it flows through the water, and the bladders gather protozoa, or food, and it's a vacuum system. So each leaf sucks the food into this vacuum, and then it digests it, and then it flushes it out. It's a very complex vacuum system that this plant is. It is a very diminutive. You would never really notice it. But I happened to tell one of our botanists here that I've been looking for this plant, and so she knew that. And then I posted a picture on Facebook of my swamp, and she said, "This is in July," and she said, "Oh, you'll have bladderwort back in your swamp." And I said, "No, listen, I've been looking for this plant for 50 years. There's no way." And then, you know what? The next time I went out and I was sitting there, and there it was, the beautiful little yellow flower sticking up out of the water. And there it is. And so I do have Utricularia cornuta in our beaver flowage. So happy. Blue barn swallows. So these are down below are our monarch caterpillars munching on the milkweed. Oh, and I didn't know this at the time. So cattails actually have male and female parts in the flower. So the bottom part of the cattail that you see, that's sort of the brown velvety cigar part of the cattail, is actually the female flower, and then the fuzzy part above is the male flower. I just never really realized that. I'm telling you, every time I went out and saw something and then came back and researched it, I did learn something. And this, the bottom part, is the pickerel weed, and I'll get back to that. That ties in later on. But this is a beautiful picture of the pickerel weed flower that is part of my swamp. So we have a gravel pit that's ours about a mile away from the flowage, and there was a hole into our gravel pit, and my husband put in one of his builder's cameras, and inside was a belted kingfisher. About 3 feet in, the channel went in, and then at 3 feet there was a big sort of open dome cavern, and it was sitting in there and was looking back at him with these big eyes and a beak. So they live actually in the walls of our gravel pit. Queen Anne's lace and American goldfinch. Okay, so number one, this orb web spiders. I know you know this this spider web in your gardens, particularly, that you see it. There's a Z pattern, and then you see this beautiful big orb web spider. So that they think that the Z pattern, that's a tripling of the silk, is to prevent birds from flying through and flying through their webs, so that it's obvious. And then I'm sure you probably know about praying mantises, the female mantis. So when they're mating, so when the male mates with the female, she's got that long, elegant neck, and so he's mating, and then she can turn around. And she was eat his head off, which happens. But the thing I didn't know is that the male can keep thrusting for 2 hours without a head. Sounds kind of like a guy thing. These are some insect moths that we called it the Relaxation Chamber. So this first moth is a small-eyed Sphinx moth, and one of the neat things is that when its wings are down, it looks just like a dead leaf. But when it flashes, when its wings open, it has these 2 bright eyes that look back, and it's a way to scare predators, to shock a predator and scare them off. And then this other moth, never mind, it's too complicated. So this is a thing about the milkweed patch that I was following. I found all these little black and orange tiny larvae, and it turned out they were milkweed tussock moth larvae, and there were thousands of them. And my initial response or reaction was to take those leaves and to put them far away on the other side of the field. But I decided I wasn't going to interfere with biodiversity, and so I left them, unfortunately. And they decimated the entire Asclepius patch in a matter of 24 hours. So all of my monarch caterpillars that had been there got wiped out. So if you ever see these guys, and they're little fuzzy, velvety fuzzy, take those leaves and move them far away, because they will decimate the whole patch, and you won't have any monarch caterpillars being able to okay, so this is tansy, a brush-footed butterfly, the great spangled fritillaria. Oh. Okay, so there's a book called The Natural Landscapes of Maine, a guide to natural communities and ecosystems. It's from the Maine Department of Conservation. And so what they have is they have like 127 different ecosystems from Maine. And then you can identify where you're sitting or where you're at. And so I was looking, and so my ecosystem is actually called a Pickerel Weed Marsh, because I have the three indicator species. So the the indicator species are pickerel weed, which I showed you before, and the horned bladderwort, and then the yellow water lily, spatterdock. So these are the three flowers that are really indicator species, and the pickerel weed was a dominant species. So it was just kind of neat to see that in 127 ecosystems that was how mine was defined. The cicada, which apparently is going to be a real amazing problem, or down south this year. The 17-year cycle is happening this year. So this is my pickerel weed marsh, and this is in the late fall. And so this actually got taken over by a rush, a common rush. And I'm not sure if it's because this is the beginning. Last summer was really a drought, but this was sort of the beginning of the drought, was in the 2019. The water was much lower, and this rush came, and it got like 6 feet tall. Oh, the ravens are wonderful here. Uh-oh, my internet connection is unstable. I hope I don't lose you. So the correction here at the bottom is that what I thought was a fungus at my very first day of sitting is actually a lichen, pixie cup lichen, Cladonia ashinae. And I got really into lichens actually at the end of my course. Acorn eaters. Oh, this is wild raisins. I didn't realize that wild raisins were edible, but you'd have to eat a million of them to get any sustenance. Oh, so we had our first frost. So what that was, wait a minute. September 18th here. Yep, was our first frost. And this is an ode to the red squirrel. This red squirrel, well, actually this red squirrel, I saw this red squirrel dangling on a flap of the tablecloth and was swinging back and forth like it was, and it was absolutely playing. It was just playing, it was swinging on a table. So it's the end, sort of getting to the end of September, and the coyotes are coming out and being more vociferous. This is that woo that you hear. That's a greeting song from the coyotes. I think the wood ducks, I don't know if they're starting to leave. So, and down at the bottom, I saw a American pondweed. I had no idea what that was until I looked it up, and I said, "There's a new weed in this water, and it's American pondweed." Hence, it looks like a pondweed. But this is something new, and I think part of this has to do with the drought and climate change. The drought is changing the nature of the plants and animals that have been in this flowage for years that I've known. I've never seen American pondweed there before. Giant water bug, it's also called a toe biter. And the predators in our swamp, the red-tailed hawk, which this is starting to be, now it's Indian summer, beautiful. The 2018 foliage was absolutely stunning, gorgeous. And so this orange bean jelly, which I've seen it forever, but I didn't really realize it was edible. I guess it's kind of gelatinous, but I read that it's actually used in a lot of Asian soups. And I have to say I haven't tried it yet, but I think I shall sometime. And we have a lot of deer in our field going to the swamp. Winter berries, and now it's getting to be the middle of October, so it's definitely fall. People are leaving. The northern flickers are leaving. Oh, it's just messing with a raven. Virginia creeper, the daddy longlegs. So this is all fall. These are all fall critters. The ruffed grouse. So I didn't realize the ruffed grouse, when he's drumming, he's actually standing up on top of a log and he's drumming on the log. Okay, single cattail spike contains about 1 million seeds, each of which possesses the silky parachute and can breeze over a 1-acre cattail marsh, can dispense up to 1 trillion seeds. Nature is amazing. This is the last dragonfly of the season. So I call this red on red because the red that he's sitting on is actually a lichen called British soldiers, Cladonia cristatella. But this is in the fall, and this is the last dragonfly that's in the season. It's called an autumn meadowhawk, and they'll be the last going deep into November, and then tamarack. So this is what's happening on November 11th in 2019. The geese are flying back, flying away. They're leaving now. And this is what was in my head when I was sitting on my rock. All that stays is dying and all that lives is getting out. See the geese in chevron flight flapping and racing on before the snow. They've got the urge for going and they've got the wings so they can go. They get the urge for going when the meadow grass is turning brown. Summertime is falling down and winter's closing in. Famous Joni Mitchell song. And so they are leaving. Another thing that I saw that I don't know if you, I saw when they were in the chevron and they were flying and it was overhead, that the lead goose actually dropped out, and I thought it was maybe the next guy that would come up to the front, but actually it was someone way in the back who took over and came up to the very front to relieve everybody. And this is poison ivy fruit, which I never really saw as much as 2019 had a lot of fruit in the fall. It looked like tons and tons of like these white berries, but they were poison ivy fruit, which of course is, it's toxic to us, but it's a very important winter foraging food for winter for birds and mammals. So, like I said, every time I went out there, there was something happening that I just could not, it was always astounding to me. And this is November 18th, I went out and one of the great blue herons was laying dead on the ground. And I picked him up and I actually called the Maine game warden and he came down to get it. But I'm pretty sure it was an eagle. I can't imagine what else could kill a heron. So they did take it to try to see what was going on as far as disease or whatever. So this is the heron's legs and the heron's neck that I was doing a sketch, but there's this bone in the heron's neck that actually, this is what makes them to be able to strike as hard and fast as they do when they're fishing. And it was sort of heartbreaking to me because my logo for my midwifery service for years and years was a heron flying in front of the moon. Okay, so this is the last of the dragonflies, and I don't know why I like this stuff, but so speaking of dragonflies, this is when I went back to research Odonata species. So the female dragonfly, when she's flying and she mates and she's mated, she's fertilized, and then the male flies off. But then other males try to mate with her, and they're a little aggressive. They can be pretty aggressive. And so what she does when she doesn't know how to deal with that is she fakes her own death. She spins and she falls out of the sky and she lands on the ground and she lays there until the male flies away. And then she gets up and takes off and hopefully has wonderful babies. This is moss. Okay, so this is about sitting out on the rock in the winter. This is my rock, and this is December 4th. But I learned about snowflakes, that snowflakes are alive. Snowflakes actually, when I was doing this research, the snowflake, in the middle of a snowflake is a Pseudomonas syringae, which is a gram-negative bacterium with a polar flagella. So each snowflake actually has DNA, and this is how this flagella, this bacterium can actually cross over oceans and can be everywhere because it's actually in snowflakes. Never in a million years did I think that would be possible. So basically, you know, when you go out and if you look at things and then you come back and research it, you learn a lot of things that I just had no idea was happening around me, and it's really fascinating. Rough grouse, nice. Pileated woodpecker holes. Okay, so then I'm starting to get worried about where are all the birds. I know that, you know, they migrate, but it was very silent, and actually it's become more silent each winter, but I have to say right now that all the birds are back and it's great, but it was very silent. So this is the geology of where I was sitting, and the red circle is where my rock is, but it actually is a glacial moraine. The whole stream and the whole flowage is a glacial moraine. And we have otters that I followed the otters. And otters have been clocked up to 17 miles an hour when they're sliding in the snow. This is a drawing I did of an otter, and I kind of liked it after I was done because it really looks like he's saying, "Hey, baby." I don't even know how it came out like that, but that's my rendition of an otter. Pileated woodpecker, the most powerfully beautiful woodpecker. So I did get into lichens. I never thought I would, but I actually started really looking at lichens closely with a loop and learning more about them, and mostly about their medicinal properties. That was what I was really interested in. Okay, so this is the end of January, and I'm sitting on my rock, and by now I'm really feeling sorry for myself. It's like 0 degrees. And I wrote, "All of nature is hibernating. If you listen carefully, this silence is beautiful. I'm stunned by the silence all around me, and I'm learning how to quiet myself." Yeah, it was quiet and cold and miserable, and I was feeling sorry for myself for quite a while. These are 2 other kinds of lichens that I powdered beard lichen, Usnea. So both of these, this one and the next one, have incredible antibacterial, antiviral properties, and so I've been tincturing those, especially now. But if you're interested, you should really research these. The usnic acid in Usnea is effective against gram-positive bacteria such as Streptococcus and Staphylococcus, and it's also effective against a bacterium that commonly causes pneumonia. I have pictured both of those. I'll come back to that in a second. So this is blue flag iris pods, which is the only thing that was actually sticking out of the snow. And when you look at them with a loop inside their chambers, they're actually like astoundingly beautiful in their austerity. So sitting in the snow, there's a stillness behind motion. When time itself stops, the center is also the circumference of all. But this was actually a day it was too cold and I couldn't even stay out there. I had to leave. It is midwinter in the time of the year's death, and the fields lie fallow. Now all is gestating, waiting, but everything passes and changes under the snow. Every ending is a new beginning. Seeds become fruit, fruit becomes seed. Now sleep the sleep of a newborn. So while I was out there on the rock, all of a sudden I got it. Like, that's the whole point, is it's suspended. It's supposed to be quiet because everything's underneath is getting ready to make the shift. And it was quite a powerful experience. Oh, and rabbit. So the bunny beans are one of the first things that I saw in the snow. And this is a mated coyote pair. The female is actually larger than the male, but they walked right up to me and looked at me and figured that they felt sorry for me, and I was absolutely no threat. They just kept walking by. Okay, so this lichen at the bottom, the lungwort, Liberia plumenaria, that's the one that is a very strong medicine. It's used in a lot to treat respiratory illnesses. It's a natural antibiotic, and it's ideal for treating bronchial and chest infections. If you're interested in this, there's a book called shoot. Wait a minute, I had it here somewhere. I'm sorry. So it's called the Lost Book of Herbal Remedies, The Healing Power of Plant Medicines. Nicole Appelian, Lost Book of Herbal Remedies. And she actually is one of the few books that actually goes into a lot about lichens. I highly recommend it. And this, now it's getting the end of February and it's actually starting to open up a little bit more like spring. And these are tracks of turkeys, a whole flock of turkeys that were walking along this is the frozen flowage here. And I was following them and I actually fell in. And our resident bald eagles, which, you know, you have to love them, but I do feel like that they are eating birds smaller than they are because we've overfished the Gulf of Maine and there's not enough whitefish, and so they're actually turning to other birds, which is kind of unfortunate. But nature is neither kind nor cruel. So I'm sitting on my rock. It's March 3rd. I'm almost done a whole year and it's quiet and there's really nothing happening. And then all of a sudden I hear a buzzing and it's like, Persephone returns. I never thought I'd be so glad to see a fly in my life. I'm so happy to see another living being on this rock that I could kiss this fly. It's a robber fly that landed right next to me. And then it says, robber flies overwinter as larvae in the soil, pupating and enlarging as adults in the spring. It is a predator and attacks its prey by stabbing it with its short, strong proboscis, injecting the victim with saliva containing neurotoxins and proteolytic enzymes, which very rapidly paralyze the victim and soon digest the insides. The robber fly then sucks the liquefied material through its proboscis. Yeah, well, I guess I might not be kissing this fly. And March 11th, the geese are coming back. And they're returning and they're honking. And this is coming home. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clear blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Mary Oliver. So this March 11th was the final night of my class, my Maine Master Naturalist class. When I presented this as my capstone project, I presented this. It was a Wednesday evening. And half of my class did their presentations that night, and the other half we're going to present on Saturday, the following Saturday, which was our graduation day. And that was also the same night that the director of the World Health Organization proclaimed COVID-19 as a global pandemic. And so everything came crashing down. I never saw my classmates again. The other half of the class never presented, and we never graduated. Yet, and this is the last day that we were ever together. So I was terribly upset by that, but then this is March 19th, my last day of sitting. This is the Vernal Equinox, and this is what I woke up to. This was a glorious, glorious sunrise over my mandala. So it gave me hope that we would all make it through, which we have, I hope. And then these are some steps I did about how to journal. An entire realm lies at our feet. Small beings issue an invitation to dwell the right time at the limits of ordinary perception. All it requires of us is attentiveness. Look in a certain way and a whole new world can be revealed. And the time to begin is now. So that's it, I think, right? Yep, that's my last slide. And these blue spotted salamanders right now are on the move. If you look in vernal pools right now, you'll probably be able to see the spermatophore from these salamanders at the bottom of the vernal pools. Anyway, thank you. Sorry it was so croaky. I have no idea why. I'm done.
So we had one question come in through the chat from Wayne. He was asking what the website was for the Maine ecosystems book.
Okay, so I actually, yes, and it's a very, it's a old little golden nature guide, and it's called Pond Life, a golden nature guide. It's not a kid's book, but let's see, 1967. This is left over from when I did my natural history course in 1967. But there is a great whole section on ponds and lakes and their ecosystems, and it's good. It's very concise, but it's really good. So a golden nature guide, Pond Life.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think we had any other questions. Does anyone have another question?
I have one for you, Carol. If you could pass on one piece of advice to the folks out there watching, what would it be?
I think that what I would say is that to get outside and to sit and be open, and to be, I mean, especially with this whole past year when we were kind of prisoners. I mean, you know, it would have been a great thing for everybody, and I know not everybody's in this right situation to be able to do that, but to be able to just go outside and open to nature and open to whatever she's going to tell you, or whatever she wants to, whatever you observe. I mean, because every single time you go out, there will be something new. It's guaranteed, just absolutely guaranteed.
Awesome, thank you.
Did everybody stay awake the whole time, or what?
I think so. Linda was asking, did you hear back if the rabbit was a cottontail or not?
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. So here's what happened. They had several meetings about that rabbit, and they really couldn't tell. So they did send it away to have genome sequencing done, and it ended up being a snowshoe hare, not a cottontail. But they think that what's happening is the snowshoe hares are not turning white here on the coast in the winter because of climate change, because it's getting too warm, and that's what they think. But definitely those rabbits stay brown. I saw them this winter, and they're still brown. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. I totally forgot.
Looks like we have another question from Rachel, and she said, did you sit outside all day? If not, did you go out there at the same time of day?
I wanted to go out there at the same time of day every time, although they actually recommend that you go in the night or, you know, different times, but I tried to go the same time every day, but it also depended on the weather. Like if it was really, really crappy, I mean, like pouring rain, I would wait until it cleared up. But I tried to go, you know, like mid-morning. I just also wanted to be a little bit more comfortable, like when I went, and I didn't want to really be miserable. So I would wait until the weather got a little bit, but a couple of times I went when it was really stormy and windy and horrible, and but it would be interesting to go, at different times, like the night and in the morning and the day. But anyway.
There we go. Well, I think that's actually all of our questions. So thank you so much, Carol. This was really great.
So
Yeah,
I
a lot of
might
good-
see you too, if you get involved with the Maine Master Naturalist program it's going to be in Washington County next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm going to be a mentor, and I'm really excited about that. So I hope that you guys will be involved in that. That'll be great.
Great. And I'll send information about the Maine Master Naturalist program out to all of our participants today so they can learn more about it. Maybe they'll
Great.
want to join the program.
Yeah, it's
So I'll make sure I
wonderful.
get that
It's
information
totally,
out.
yeah, it's totally great.
So-
Okay, thanks guys.
Well, thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
For
Bye.
anyone, yep,
Bye.
goodbye.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, for anyone interested, our next presentation is on May 3rd, and it's gonna be about whales. So stay tuned
Wow.
if you want to join that one. All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.